fine. Okay, cool. So.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Why We Roll, the game design podcast about indie TTRPGs from the Stillfleet Studio. As ever, I'm Wythe Marschall, and I'm joined by the other host of the show.
Oh, hey, what's up? It's me, Chris Pickett. How's it going?
It's going well. I'm excited. This is a. You can tell we're not at our regular time if you're watching live.
I know I'm all
Otherwise,
discombobulated.
you have no idea if you're listening to the pod. So we're taping this on a Sunday afternoon here on the East Coast because we have a guest in another time zone, the lovely Konstantine Paradias, Kos. So thanks so much, Konstantine, for joining us. And
Howdy doody, everybody.
Yeah, we're excited to hear about your work and talk about a new game, which we're also very excited to announce. Also, I should say, we're joined by another guest we've had on the show before. We'll have on the show again. What's up, Tony? Anthony Grasso.
Heyo, it's good to be back.
Yeah, man, great to have you.
You can never escape.
You just can't. Yeah, now you have to come back.
Just when I thought I was out, they pod me back in.
They pod me back in.
That's pretty good.
That's good.
Well, we're podding you back in today, Tony, because you illustrated ULTRADELVE, which is the new game we're going to be talking about that Konstantine wrote. So it's a grid system game. But before we get into that, of course, we want to just kick it off by learning more about our special guest who's not been on the show before. So, Konstantine, why don't you just start us off? Why don't you just introduce yourself? Tell us who you are, what kind of games you work on, and we can ease into the main feature here of a new TTRPG that you've authored.
Hey, so howdy doody, everybody. How you doing? My name's Konstantine. I am a writer by choice. I'm a narrative designer by profession. Narrative designer is a fancy video game way of saying you write the words and then you put them in boxes inside the game, so they show up when you play. Just explaining. I just summarized like 3 hours of GDC talks for you guys. You're welcome. Anyway,
Nice.
So I have been in the hobby of games since 2003. Or thereabouts, I think, where what happened was I wandered by accident into a section of like a toy store near where I used to live. It was like all the Warhammer figures, like all the rule books, and it kind of like activated something in me, but I barely I didn't speak English very much back then. So like I was like, what is this? It just activated something in the back of my brain. So I got into gaming back then, of course. Greece with regard to the hobby, because that's where I'm from. We're kind of like trapped in amber. So like the only games you can really find here are like Dungeons and Dragons, the latest version, and Old World of Darkness, and that's it. So, in an effort to try it, because D&D didn't quite jive with me, I started working with a bunch of games, started making like a bit of collection, strong-arming my friends to play new games. So that's how I kind of got into game design, because, the nerd blood in me forced me to do a heartbreaker, and I'm pretty deep. I've done a couple of things I didn't really like until we got to ULTRADELVE, which is a whole story that we'll show a little bit later. We might as well not talk shop the entire time. But yeah, and for video games, I wrote the stories for Raft, Scrap Mechanic, which is currently out. It's finally out of early access, everybody. Some of you were kids when you started. Now you're old enough to drink, and it's out.
Oh my God, yeah, that game's been in early access for years.
It's out. It's crazy. I know. I saw that the guys in the team were telling me it's out, and I'm like, it's crazy. Anyway, 11 years I worked on it. So these games are out. I wrote the story for Flintlock, The Siege of Dawn, Lords of the Fallen 2, and recently Tank Rat. So yeah, it's been busy. It's been good. It beats working in publishing, which I used to work on. Which, by the way, publishing coming apart, same trajectory as video games, same trajectory as hobby. Everybody's like panicking, and I'm like,
yeah,
third time, baby, let's go.
Yeah, it's like
exact
no
same
escape.
trajectory.
No
the bubble's
escape.
gonna burst.
The death machine, yeah, the bursting bubbles.
Exactly.
But maybe it's not about escape. It's about riding. It's about surfing the wave, surfing the collapsing waveform of the bubble of late stage capitalism. And we're out here surfing on the edges, baby, in the Indies. Yeah, the Indie shallows. I don't know. Metaphor, beach.
Look, I mean, publishing and like creative stuff has always sucked. I will remind you of the line by Ernest Hemingway in one of his letters, which was "Screw literature." He hated it too. So
it always feels like a push and pull, kind of a love-hate relationship where it's like you were saying, like the nerd in you got to get this heartbreaker out, you got to do these projects.
Yes.
You feel compelled to do it, but then the process itself and the industry itself can be kind of harrowing. It can be pretty tough.
Yeah, and just as a historical note, I think it is worth remembering to these points. I mean, these are all historically material phenomena that exist in time, right? So like publishing as a whole is only a couple hundred years old, really, in any modern sense. And the people who had access to it at the beginning were all essentially rich people, predominantly white, or sort of the comprador, class in the colonies. I mean, and Japan had its own history, and China as well. But you really don't see like most people being able to sort of create art in a mass media environment until arguably maybe social media. Definitely, there's like punk zine stuff way before that. But I think the idea that we should all be able to make a living under capital, like making whatever games and art we want, is a cool dream. But yeah, we're like, the economy doesn't support that anyway. So it's always been a battle, and it will continue to be a battle. That said, maybe today we can talk a little about video games versus video games versus and or TTRPGs, kind of those relationships. That's one thread that we've explored for sure here on the show. But since Konstantine, you are another pro, like we had on Claire Carre, so, this is the second time I think we've had on, and Lawrence Phillips, right? So we've had on, I guess, 3 people who are narrative designers who've written video games. So I think it's an interesting question, because these are just the big, video games are the biggest games. So it's always great to sort of hear from that other side. And given there's so many similarities, right? Or I take it there are, and even I've never written a video game. Before we get too deep into those weeds, though, I do think, Tony, do you want to give us a little bit of a re-intro, any updates? I know we've had you on the show, but it's always lovely to see you. And in case people are tuning in for the first time, who are you, and what is your involvement with games?
Oh, hi there. I am Anthony Grasso. I usually go by Tony. I work with the studio to do a bunch of illustrative work. I take on a lot of the graphic design, and I think most, if not all, of the layout stuff that I can get my hands on. Occasionally, I trick everybody into believing I can write some games, and so
Oh, please.
I dabble in the writing aspect a little bit. I am getting more confident. I will say that I am feeling better and better about the written work that I'm producing. But I predominantly am in the illustrative and layout side of the games, industry. And as far as our involvement with Konstantine and the stuff that we've been building together, I took on all of the illustration and the graphic design and kind of building out the visual world for ULTRADELVE. And I'm always doing other stuff in the background with the studio, and I have other like projects off in the ether. A very long stewing project with an associate across the pond that may or may never come out. Fingers crossed it will. But yeah, I'm a little Floridian goblin drawer, and that is my that is my job.
He's our favorite Florida man.
I do my best.
That's true. That part's true.
There could definitely be worse Florida men to be drawing your goblins. I can prefer a couple.
Oh man,
I gotta ask about the project. You say maybe it comes out. Like, what's wrong with it?
Good question.
Damn.
It began as a Borg hack, and then we realized we don't like how the mechanics work. We weren't a fan of the system after we spent a lot of time doing that. And then we were like, well, if we're going to do something different, like we'll just make our own system. And so that's taken, I don't know, it's not a simple task. So that is what is taking longer. And then the more you work on something, I think we're in the stage now where if we wanted to put something out and be done with it, I think we could. But I think I suffer from a certain amount of perfectionism. And so it just kind of keeps getting reworked. It's like, it could be 10% better. It could be, we could retool this. It'll get there one day. One final point. I think luckily for both of us, it's neither of our main thing that we're doing. So it's kind of able to be picked at in the background. And so we're able to kind of pick it up and put it down and pick it up and put it down, for better or worse, really.
Yeah. Sounds
what
like
I want to say though.
You back on the show. Yeah, sorry, Konstantine, go ahead.
No, it's just for personal projects, because it's always like everybody gets trapped in this. Just remember, Tony, perfect is the opposite of done.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Don't let great be the enemy of good.
Yes. It's perfect is the opposite of done was the one thing I was told by a director for one game. And in another game, we were trying, everything was like a mess. It was another project that never came out. And then like the director comes out and says, guys, we're not getting the BAFTA. Let's just, make it happen. The game never got made. We never got the BAFTA, but it's nice to imagine.
And neither happened.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
The British Actors Something Award, is it? No.
Yeah. It was a Commonwealth Studio. Let's just call it that.
Okay. I just pictured Idris Elba, like squeezes your shoulder and is like, "It's all right, mate. Like, I know this game is great, even if no one else does."
I love your narrative design.
Nothing worked, but like the dialogue was great.
Yeah, Dame Mirren sends you a nice letter every Whitsuntide Day or whatever. Yeah. Anyway.
I love this fantasy world we're building. This is awesome.
I know. Yes. Now I'm going to write this one-page game. About,
it's called The Great Copeland. Anyway,
all of Konstantine's games in Japan and Europe that never came out.
It's a bunch of projects. Just letting you guys know for every game that comes out is a minor miracle. Every game. Every game that comes out is a minor miracle.
Speaking of games that have come out and minor miracles, I do just want to tag really quick. The way that we met Konstantine is through our good friend Leo Andrade, who hooked us up with Kos to help us out with this little ditty. Oh, if I can get the glare not to get it, but with Guide to the Abandoned World. Kos wrote a brilliant chapter on pagan Lithuania, and it is I've ran games set in your chapter, and I got to say it's really rich. It's very fun. It's got some great narrative elements to it, just I don't know, wanted to tag that, like little bit of history of working together here. So
yeah, no, that's a really good point, Chris, and really nailed the brief. And I think again, it was great.
Yeah,
that was one aspect of that project, which was only last year, which was less than a year ago, which we have to remember. So Kos, we haven't known you that long, but it was really great because you really nailed the brief in one shot, and we were impressed. And it was also just genuinely fun to get a pitch from someone we didn't know, but a friend of a friend, someone more or less trusted because of that, who had a clear vision for a game that we hadn't even fully made yet. Chris obviously had years, but, I was scrambling to write 300 pages about dungeons in France, and Tony was rapidly cobbling together sort of 4 books worth of layout and such, so ornaments and whatnot. So I think it was interesting to kind of meet in those circumstances, and I think that's been one aspect of being able to publish work not just by me or now by my friends, but by essentially other industry people, other professional writers and designers. That's been one of the most fun because, as much as my friends are great, I mean, it's also nice to kind of get into the industry in that way and learn from other people and just kind of how they approach these books. So thank you for helping us figure out, what is Danse Macabre? How does one do the dance?
How do you do the dance?
I want to say it's a great idea. It's a great concept. It's a great world to run the game in. Like a world where death no longer exists and dying slowly but surely turns you into a monster. Like, sign me up, peak grimdark. It was a great thing to work on, and especially like Lithuania, because it was at the time that the story takes place, it is the last pagan bastion in Europe, and it's being torn apart essentially by grifters.
Yeah,
essentially, because it's the last non-Christian nation. Everyone wants their hand in. The Teutonic Order of Knights and a lot of the knights who were enterprising at the time were essentially go-betweens for like sacking and pillaging that's going on there. And you have like a civilization slowly being destroyed essentially by grifting. right?
Yeah.
And the problem is even with the neo-paganism that exists now, where they're trying to revive the ancient faith.
Romuva.
The problem with a lot of the pagan faiths is like they did not have a canon. They did not have much of a written legacy, so we don't know. Like a lot of the things we found. That's why with the direction I decided to choose was I can make this historically accurate, which is impossible, or I can make this interesting and playable. So hence the direction. So it's a tragedy that we've lost these things. But on the other thing, I was very interested in this idea of like writing a story that accounts for this kind of like chaos.
Yeah. No, and I appreciate
I love
that.
it.
Yeah, and I think that came out actually with a lot of the work for Guide because of just exactly what you said. So just a couple anecdotes, like the one for Egypt, obviously there's a way more known about in a sense. I mean, Egyptology as a kind of special branch of history and archaeology is massive and a big deal in both the Anglo-American, kind of colonizer world, but also in Egypt itself. There's massive state investment. But at the same time, I mean, nobody really knows, and it's a fantasy. So, like, the idea of, like, well, we have to include mummies of some kind. Mummies are just a cool idea.
Yeah.
So how do mummies
You
work
gotta.
in this world?
Well, you gotta. Mummy.
They're breaking our own rules. So I think that was a fun one. And then very differently, for more to what you're saying about Lithuania and Romuva, and we don't really know how Romuva works or whatever, with Thailand, like, my Sunari Paiwang in the studio, who's Thai, like, was researching it and didn't, it's not something that's covered well in schools because really Thai history starts right after this period with Ayutthaya. And so Sukhothai is kind of taught as like, yeah, there was another Thai-speaking city-state, whatever, Mandala Kingdom. But it's sort of unclear how much archaeologists, at least from what I've read in English, agree on very basic circumstances of what this large city in what is, it's the middle of a jungle that was, there were a bunch of people there and they had a kingdom, but we don't know that much about it. So it's, when we talk about, when you compare what I could find in English on Sukhothai versus like medieval France at the same time, it's like mind blowing because there were probably more people in Sukhothai. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's really, it's like, it's a shame. And we know, I mean, Gay could read the Thai sources, obviously, and we did enough to feel like, okay, we did our job. We wrote a few pages for a zombie survival game with fun stuff to do. But yeah, it was really, really fascinating to think like, oh, well, this will be easy. We can Google in 2 languages, and then not the case.
Not so.
I mean, look, here's the situation. The problem is with countries that are like more tropical or more humid climes. That's what destroys a lot of the historical record. That's the issue. That's why, for example, a lot of, Greek scholars lament, oh, we've lost so many like papyri. Damn it, I can't say it.
Yeah, it's something like that.
Yeah,
papyruses.
So yes, exactly. No, it's Latin.
It's
Latin.
not, yeah, I know.
So, anyway, we've lost a lot of written material because it's been destroyed over the passage of time and because of the climate, which has caused this. And sometimes, in some cases, it's political. Sometimes an invading force makes sure to destroy, destroy the occupied force and destroy their civilization on purpose. For example, like in the Bronze Age, when you have you guys seen the Assurbanipal meme?
No, I don't know that one.
No, please tell us.
The one I'm gonna link this to you later, where it's like it's Ashurbanipal, one of the best known Assyrian kings, and he goes on into like this huge rant about how he destroyed all these like cities of Babylon, etc., etc., etc. And in a lot of these things, what he says is he forced the kings to destroy the remains of their fathers. He took the gods from the city, and he made sure to destroy a lot of the writing. One of the main things that the Assyrians did when they destroyed Babylon for good, but then it came back to destroy them, but whatever, was they made sure to destroy all the writing. So it was like a thing that they did, which was like, okay, we completely raise our enemies, so in a few generations we can start fresh. So that's why a lot of these things are lost, unfortunately.
Yeah, and shout out to Christopher Nolan for figuring out how the Bronze Age really worked.
Yes,
with the help of Matt Damon. So now that we've solved that,
you also didn't like You also didn't like the Odyssey, I assume.
No, I haven't. I'm gonna go see
I haven't
it.
seen
I'm
it.
a big fan of action movies. I'm a big fan of Jason Bourne fighting Cyclopes. So I don't know how much you're Greek, not to dox you,
Yeah.
but you're somewhere in Greece, right? So you can
Yes.
you can tell us how many Cyclopes. What does it really look like when you fight a Cyclops? But I'll see Jason Bourne's version anytime. Sorry, it's unrelated. I appreciate what you're saying about Ashurbanipal and yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
Well, also just to tie it all back, right? Like the thing that we talked about a lot with Leo and with our friends at the Maniculum podcast is that, you're not trying to create a historical record or reproduce a historical record. You're trying to create a medievalism, right? So kind of similar with like different interpretations of the Bronze Age, Stone Age, things like that. But just to your point earlier, Konstantine, the historical accuracy matters to a degree, but you can get away with a lot, and leaning into the fantasy, making it fun, making it weird is kind of where the gold's at, I think.
I mean, look, the thing is, human history is super weird.
Yeah.
Right? Super weird. It's a bunch of apes, soft-brained. They're doing whatever, right? So a lot of it's full of strangeness. So we can draw from the strangeness. If we over-fixate on the historical accuracy, you need to keep in mind that a TTRPG, first and foremost, is about player agency, right? And thus giving the player the ability to live out a power fantasy they couldn't do otherwise. Anything else kind of like falls second. It's kind of how I recently had a disagreement with a coworker about the Beast of Gevaudan. You guys probably know about it. Okay, for whoever doesn't know it,
please tell us.
Okay, it's a mystery animal which most likely was a large wolf that terrorized the Gevaudan, an area in France. Anyway, it killed a bunch of villagers, it killed a bunch of animals. People went out and hunted it for weeks in order to find it. And legend says that it was only killed when someone shot it with a silver bullet, which is where the myth that we have now with the werewolves comes alive.
Yeah. Like intersects with a lot of German folklore around werewolves as well. There's kind of like a little cross-pollination happening.
Exactly. So if you look at it from the historical record, most likely what happened is you have a lot of suffering French peasants who weren't very tall to begin with. They see a slightly taller wolf that can jump over them. They're scared because I don't know if you guys have ever seen a wolf. Like it's pretty scary.
They're huge.
Exactly. So it's on an atavistic level. Like you scared the monkey part of your brain is scared of it. So it's like it's way scarier than you think. Anyway, so they see it and they're like that. And my coworker was like, "Oh, it was probably that." And like, was it, or was it a runaway lion from a weird French noble that a kung fu Native American and another French investigator fought, like in the Brotherhood of the Wolves? Which would you rather play?
Yeah, the Loup Garou. I mean, this. I think you're hitting on.
Which would you rather play? Do you want to fight the guy with the bone whip and the mutated lion, or do you want to fight?
It made me think because I think the French werewolf movie tradition is closer to me to like a Western version of wuxia, where it's taking the best stuff from history and being like, yeah, but also everyone is a master martial artist who might have,
it could do parkour.
Like, they can do parkour, they can fly sometimes. I mean, it's like, yeah, because that's more fun, and it doesn't really harm. It doesn't get in the way of some kind of teaching me a little about medieval or early modern Chinese history, some of the period pieces, or mid-century kind of like drug-fueled, gunfights or whatever. Like, it doesn't get in the way of that to also have people all just be super good at fighting. So I think that's a great gloss on TTRPGs, Konstantine, is that you want to feel like there's a real world of some kind. It could be a secondary fantasy world, or it can be Earth, whatever. But it's an interesting place, and this is a segue to ULTRADELVE. It's an interesting place we can imagine right away. But our characters are interesting people, and we're not just total schmoes. And I know that maybe there's OSR, NSR people out there who'll push back, but I think complete schmoness without any chance of survival is not that interesting. I mean, I think you have to feel like your character is kind of some version of protagonistic in some way, and I think the games achieve that in many ways. So maybe we can start talking about how you went about designing and why you chose this genre, but specifically a modern sci-fi game in the tradition of zone science fiction, so Roadside Picnic and so on, to cue it up. But yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I completely agree with your gloss on like, you know, what makes these games interesting.
So the situation, here's the situation with ULTRADELVE. ULTRADELVE started as kind of an idea in my head back when I was a kid, and I was being a dumbass, and me and a bunch of my friends went into this abandoned area. We didn't know what it was. To this day, we haven't figured out what the hell it was. What we know is it was abandoned. It was full of like dead vehicles, full of like dead machines, etc. We were being dumbasses. We were climbing all over the place. And then the fun was over when I slipped up and I fell into like this rusted old washing machine and like tore my knee entirely, right? That kind of completely fucked me up. They had to take me to the hospital. Fun time was over. They didn't let us go near. Next year, the entire area was gone. We never found out what it was. It was the corpse of a place that we didn't know what it was. And I got in the back of my head and I'm like, man, that's such a cool idea. I wish I could somehow find out about it. Fast forward, you know, a few years later, urban exploration starts becoming a thing. I start finding about the channels like, you know, Vagrant Holiday or Super Sus. If you guys haven't heard of it, they're pretty crazy. Super Sus especially, it's a small team that do like these insane delves. And I'm thinking like, oh, you have all these abandoned places and they're going through them and they're all inherently dangerous. Then I found out next level about the people who specialize in bandos. So I don't know if you know about this. There is a whole subculture.
Never heard of bandos.
So there's a whole subculture in the US, apparently, where because a lot of people that apparently have more money than, you know, things to do with their time, will buy old vintage clothes, right? So, and they will buy them for like crazy inflated prices. So there's a whole subculture of people who go into abandoned houses and buildings and they look for these places, they look for these clothes, right? But like, you imagine you have to go in like this rotten, falling apart building, and there's like, you know, snakes and raccoons or whatever, and other people who want to steal the clothes, and you have to fight them over like a crappy pair of jeans, right? So I'm like, oh, dude, this is crazy. I wonder how I could make this into like this could be like a great idea for a game. Like you can take it like with the delving, and of course, I read Stalker. You know, the Strugatsky Brothers was hugely important. And then what happens was, one day, I found out about this. So, Esoteric Enterprises. I don't know if it's new OSR. I don't know if it's OSR. I don't think it's worth discussing this. This is a severely underrated game. It is about essentially translating dungeon delving into the modern world, right? And I wasn't much of a WOD guy, so like it went crazy. It was like, oh, this is awesome. But then I read it and I'm like, oh, it's all fantasy. And like, don't get me wrong, fantasy's great. But then what happened was at the same time, I kind of like hit on this old fantasy novel, science fiction novel. It was called The Genocides by Thomas Disch. If none of you have heard of him, I don't blame you. He is severely underrated. And and the premise was these gigantic alien trees appear all over the world. They start kind of like choking out the earth, and humanity kind of like struggles to survive. Spoiler, we don't make it. And I'm like, okay, we have this gigantic cosmic horror element. We have everything. We have this thing with dungeon delving. It works. It's a great idea. And then I'm like, I need to find a way to make this work. And eventually I kind of like start forming this idea of these gigantic cancerous buildings that are kind of like growing up all over everywhere. So like imagine in the middle of the city, you're in the middle of a city and it starts like your city, your hometown starts getting consumed by this building, right? And I'm not talking like it's kind of like an extension of the idea how it was like in RoboCop 2, where OCP decides we're making you Detroit. We're like bulldozing all of Detroit. We're not letting the people know, like the families, whatever. We're bulldozing with everybody still in it. We'll go. So you have this building that keeps growing and keeps eating everything around it, keeps like subsuming everything around it, and everyone starts, you know, trying to be able to like live around it, and they can't. They have to get pushed back. And I'm like, how long, if this happened, and you had this cancerous building growing in the city, how long would it take people to get in and start like, tearing apart the copper and trying to like steal whatever? Like,
I was going to say that, there's a lot of copper in the cancerous buildings
exactly
taking over the world right now.
I give it 15 minutes. Like, I don't know. So based on that, I was going with this idea and I was starting to like building in my head. And I was like, okay, so there's this, and the building fights back this way. Initially, it was just going to be the building fighting you. It was like fully PvE. But then I was thinking, no, wait, there's creatures in there. But where did the creatures come from and how did they figure in? And slowly I started working this idea of these gigantic buildings filled with strange biomes. They're like very dangerous to you and these very dangerous creatures. And it's always full of like people from the outside who are struggling and they need a reason to like, to pay the rent, to make the bills, to, get their kids through college. And they do this crazy delve in to steal what they can to get it out of there.
Yeah. I mean,
I love it.
And we loved the idea, and we loved this kind of fiction, and we love that it's been in Stillfleet to a degree, but Stillfleet's set canonically millions of years in the future. So we loved the idea of a game that would be very focused on urban exploration, the things you're bringing up, and abandoned structures, here today. And this would allow us to talk about, life among the ruins of capitalism, right? And the sort of honestly, Don Haraway, way of articulating it. And I think bringing in aliens to the chat, I mean, that's just fun, right? That's always fun. So I think it was a great pitch that we right away recognized was a cool game. And you had a lot of the procedures, right? So you'd already worked through sort of how you would randomize, kind of in that OSR tradition of I love Esoteric Enterprises. I love all of Amy Allen's work, but I think that book is extremely good. It is more of that crunchy D20 OSR version of same. And to your point, it's kind of like Fantasy X-Files. It's a little more playing around with ideas from X-Files, Vampire the Masquerade, whatever. So I liked that was an inspiration, but I also appreciated that you were like, no, this is the real world. As far as we know, there's no fairies or vampires, but there are aliens. Of course, you do the math. There's aliens. So I think one thing we can do is, if you are watching this, we can show you some of the art if that's cool with everybody. I'm just going to pop up the art. If you're listening to the podcast, when we refer to the art, maybe just give a little quick description. And otherwise, of course, you can head to stillfleet.com or constantinewrites.com to sort of peruse through whatever marketing materials we have up. When we are able to say more, this book has been written and now laid out and illustrated by Tony Grasso. So Tony, again, feel free to say more about your process. But the book is not out yet as of the time of this recording. We're talking about the best way to launch this. So right now we're focused on thinking through what next for the game, and we've continued to play test it and refine it. But yeah, why don't I shut up and just turn it over to Konstantine and Tony. Do you want to walk us through a little of developing the look and feel and overall like how this game came together from that initial idea you had, Konstantine, to a fully finished short, it's 64 pages, A5, a book. So more in that OSR NSR tradition, right? You buy one small book, you get all the rules, and we already have ideas for essentially dungeons, right? Built structures is what you call them, but these abandoned alien buildings.
Correct. So I will let Tony go through the nitty gritty, because I don't think it's good that I'm the only one just blabbering on about the project. I really love it, but I really want to get the artist side of the things. What I did essentially was I wanted to show Tony my main sources of inspiration. Of course, you have to include Blam, the manga that everyone references. But more
pronounce it right.
Yeah,
I hate that title so much.
Yeah, but what can you do?
Just the title. I know.
What can you do?
It's Bramo. I mean, whatever. Yeah, exactly. It's like Cthulhu. There's no correct way to say it.
Yeah. So what happened was I wanted this to look kind of different. What happens with a lot of people who reference Blam, they just focus on the brutalism. Brutalism is like the word of the day with everything lately. And the thing needed, it's like this. How do you use it up? How do you make it be more interesting and more different? So what I had looked into for structuring them was drawing inspiration from works like, for example, the Japanese metabolist movement, which was an architectural movement that was unfortunately abandoned, where the idea was copying structures from biology to structure buildings. drawing inspiration from things like Wayne Barlow's work, and drawing inspiration from works like French comics like Satania, which I really need to recommend to you guys because it is a gorgeous comic. It's also very interesting, and it's essentially a disastrous delve. It's a bunch of zero-level guys going to the disastrous delve inside the Earth and everything going full cosmic horror. So
just love a good funnel.
No, dude, no. Satania was great. The ending was kind of French. I'll call it French. It was kind of vague.
Sure.
But anyway, so I went with this. I showed this to Tony. A little bit of Drifting Classroom in for like that extra. If you guys haven't read it, best worst thing you'll ever read, in the sense that it will make you feel like psychologically dirty. But it's also an amazing horror manga. But don't read it if you have kids.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, it's pretty bleak.
Yeah.
I don't have kids, and it made me glad I don't.
Yeah. Anyway, so then I gave it to Tony, and I went like, I said omakase, and then Tony cooked, and it came out pretty great. But Tony, tell us about your process.
Yeah, I think like Konstantine said, he sent through a bunch of reference stuff, and I flipped through it, downloaded and read through. I think the style I think I had, like the illustrative style, I think I had pretty early on in the way that I wanted to render a lot of the line work. One of the things I think that changed the most throughout was for me, and I don't know if it came through on the back end as much because I was kind of doing it. I was doing the revisions and the versioning in my on my own time, but was the colors, which I ended up being really, really happy with. Kind of as the project went on, it went from being really like almost overly saturated, like in retrospect, to being way too muddy. And I think it was just a couple of happy accidents with different colors, trying different things out. I think I might have even pulled like I could find them in the files, but a couple of like photos of like landscapes, and I think maybe even like crystals, and I just color picked straight from there. So it was definitely a little bit of a different process. And then I think one of the things that became a real staple of the ULTRADELVE like layout and design were these kind of like looping, almost like circuit boardy line work, like designs that are on the page borders, and they find their way into other graphical elements. I wanted to find, as I worked on it, I started with it feeling to me very modern, which it is. It's literally like a couple of years into the future. But I think something that helped in the way I was developing and designing stuff was to think of it less as sci-fi and to think of it as like weird fantasy. And I think that ended up working out for the better. So I referenced a lot of Mobius stuff for colors and for like line quality. But then actually the way that I went about designing some of the stuff visually, I think it's most evident in the kind of circuit boardy line work, was actually the newer Zelda games. And so almost like counterintuitively, rather than referencing a bunch of sci-fi work to make this like near future sci-fi game, I had sci-fi stuff in mind, but was referencing kind of like, I don't know if Zelda's low fantasy, but like fantasy of that feel.
Yeah.
And that
I will say,
think tinged everything, not super hard sci-fi, but gave it like a goopier, softer science fantasy feel. That I think it being modern keeps it higher sci-fi, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say that I would argue that Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, the two latest like big releases in the Zelda line, like are science fantasy all the way down. Like you've literally got an iPad that you're working with. You're like building devices out of, like you're making technology. It's pretty fascinating. And that definitely comes through here. I was going to say earlier too, I completely forgot. Konstantin, when you were describing, doing the urban delving and all of that stuff too, it's like a late capitalist origin of Zelda, right? Instead of what's his name? Who God, I forget his name. You may remember. Not Miyazaki, Miyamoto, Shigeru Miyamoto. Like when he was creating Zelda, he was like referencing exploration in the woods and caves around his house in like the Kanto region. Whereas this is like, yeah, like I was in college in Houston in 2005, and we would go into abandoned oil refineries to explore, and this has that vibe to it. So there's a little bit of that fantasy just kind of built in.
Yeah, it kind of. So the thing is, I kind of based it on a bit of personal experience. I'm not gonna say it was someone I knew or it was my dad, but so here's what happened. So the economy over here is kind of borked. It's been borked since 2008. No way to put it mildly. So we had a real bad time during the June 2015, where what happened is we had a new administration. Our economy was kind of in the toilet. A bunch of things happened. The banks were forcibly shut down. You weren't allowed to withdraw any money. So it was like a nice situation. Everyone was getting desperate. So at that point, my father, in his desperation, gets the idea. He thinks, I should probably go to the dump and look for anything that's that's interesting and cool. And maybe because he has a degree in art history. He says a lot of times people like throw stuff. Maybe find something he can repurpose and resell. So he found a bunch of other people that also shared the same idea. A bunch of other of his friends. The entire time I was like, this is a terrible idea and you shouldn't do it, but I'll come with you just to watch what happens from a distance. And they would just enter the dump. So have any of you guys been to a dump?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So how it's this like for everybody else, endless wasteland, piles on piles of trash being set up there. You have random encounters with people who are also trying to steal stuff from the dump. You have like you constantly have to fight you have like random creatures, seagulls, rats, extra large cockroaches, crawling things you never quite see. They're always out of reach, so they can always you're always can get sneak attacked. And they would go in there. They would get hit by trash slides. They would get attacked by rats. They would go through this whole thing, and then they would come back with a broken vase or something, or a wrought iron chandelier, in no case state. You would be like, look, you said we couldn't do it. By the way, it was all trash. But and I was thinking, but what if they could? Hence ULTRADELVE. But seriously though. So yeah, the idea I want to go with this, but alien artifacts.
That's awesome. I do have a question for Tony. I think that some of the character, the hero shots and things like that you've put into this are really brilliant. And I love how it does feel modern, but there is there is a weird sci-fi, sci-fantasy kind of twist to it. And outside of Mobius and those kind of folks, what was the process of getting to the aesthetic of the characters specifically in the book?
It was something that we did actually have more calls on. The ULTRADELVE was one of the projects where I was kind of given a ton of free reign, and I was able to kind of ping back in every once in a while, and I got the kind of thumbs up, so I got to keep running with it. But one of the things we did talk about early was having them be kind of in people's clothes, things that if you were just a guy prior to the events of ULTRADELVE, prior to the haze, and you come out of it, what would you grab to go do this really crappy delving work, barring being able to go buy actual urban exploring gear and helmets and actual tactical gear. If you're just a dude running out into this alien structure because you desperately need to pay rent, you're probably taking a baseball helmet and the thickest jacket you have. So that was something that was kind of on my mind and putting it together. And then specifically for these class illustrations, I wanted to pose them or have them doing kind of the thing that their class describes, but I liked having them feel I guess counter to what we were saying before, like less powerful rather than like a big dynamic kind of punching an alien on the head pose. To me, it felt closer to the game to have it feel like this is just a person pulling apart the innards of some alien gears. To me, it kind of sold the game more. The promise of you are just a guy, you are putting on gardening gloves to go into an alien structure. That's weird, and that probably sucks. Something I also try to keep in mind, or that I tried to do throughout all of the different illustrative pieces, was have them feel varied. Like I had a lot of fun having there be lots of different kinds of looking and feeling people, so that it felt kind of just like a city's worth of folks running into these things. This is one of my, for those that are watching, this is one of my more favorite illustrations and spreads that I put together.
This is such a good spread.
From the publisher point of view, I think everyone loves this. This was because we basically had an extra page. So after moving stuff around and out and realizing, okay, well, we're going to move the first adventure out of the book and have it be a separate zine. So there'll be the 64-page zine with all the rules, the small book, and then there'll be a shorter one that has Konstantine's first full adventure, and those will be sort of two things that can travel together. And we can, we already, Tony and I and others have notes for other structures. But, we had this page and we thought, man, what's really missing is that sense of just a little more of the edges of the world. So there's not, this isn't a game with lore because it is the real world and you're meant to sort of lean on your own, where you live to draw inspiration from. So sort of like Blister Critters in that sense. And other, like Esoteric Enterprise is a good example of that as well. I do think it's funny, Konstantine, you mentioned your dad, because I went to the dump a bunch as a kid with my dad. He would bring us, I was one of 4 boys, and we lived in Atlanta, and a little more southeast, especially east of where we lived in southeast Atlanta, there were just like dumps. There's like an old quarry, an old car dump, and I thought at the time it was like, this makes so much sense. We're going to explore dangerous metal trash and light off fireworks. Now I'm in my 40s, my dad's long dead, and I'm like, that's so weird that his thing on a Saturday was like, what can I do with 4 little boys that's cheap? I will bring them to a dangerous playground full of spiky metal trash, and I'll let them set off bombs. Anyway, it was great. It was
They've got their tetanus shots. It's fine.
It was awesome. So, we loved it. We loved the dump.
I mean, okay. So first off, based on your dad's part, that's pretty great. But also, I feel like your dad was like one trip to the bookstore away from finding out Dungeons and Dragons and being like the best DM you ever had.
He never played with us, but he did support my older brother, who I've shouted out before. He got me into D&D back in the day. He and I played it, and our dad was vaguely. So he said that in college they'd had like their own story game type stuff, but it was very. I think a lot of it then devolved into playing poker and just drinking a lot of beer. But it was he was clearly sort of supportive.
So World of Darkness.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He loved all this kind of fiction too. So it'd be awesome to show. Shout out to dads, all I'm saying, Konstantine. Shout out to dads. But yeah, what I like about that, what you said, is that it is global, right? Your experience, my experience, it's like all around the world, people are driven by these material pressures. And I do think it's fun to imagine what that whole version of Earth looks like. And I think Tony did a great job with, you and I on Discord spamming some little thoughts, bullet pointed thoughts. And here we go with baby born with structure powers, as this kind of world news tabloid article.
The thing is with this, it's people who are driven to they're in a bad spot, and then the world has gone weird, so they're going to start doing weird things, and people are just gonna jump on the bandwagon. I mean, not to regurgitate the same nonsense that everybody has been hearing all the time, but just imagine the introduction of AI. Nobody will shut up about it. It gets talked about everywhere. It gets talked about here right now, right? Imagine how it changed it. And I'm like, okay, everyone would obviously talk about these constantly. They would want to discuss them constantly. They would be like in the discourse for everything. People would try to make money off them. They would try to get famous off them. They would try to you couldn't avoid them, right? So that what was kind of like the idea, how we ended up. And because this thing is dangerous, and because the things you get out are dangerous and weird, and you have to sell them to shady people, what I wanted was for GMs and players that run this to kind of go off their experience, because I'm sure everybody, you have to be really sheltered to not know that your hometown has a shady part, and that shady part has shady people that you can talk to get I don't know, knockoff Chinese cigarettes, right? or just a secondhand mobile phone that forget about who had it before you. It's like it's fine. It's like,
well, you got to do what you got to do to survive in the margins, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think that's really the heart of the book. It's a sci-fi game. It's easy. It's the simplest of the games we're publishing, and along with sometimes Kingdom, it's a little bit of a different strategy. So instead of a longer release or like Danse Macabre, multiple sort of a full product line, this is really one release now with the hope that we're going to do more with it, right? So we're going to have other adventures basically, which is a little more in keeping with I think a lot of OSR and SR games today. But yeah, I think the idea that this is something very relatable for many people, that the game itself is super fun, easy to learn, and it's similar to, I think, a lot of why I think Stillfleet does work. It's that spaceships are dungeons in the sky. Well, here you've made abandoned buildings are dungeons now. But of course, to your point about your thought process, they're more interesting because now they're alien. So they're sort of living structures with alien artifacts. But you could still bring in as much as you want from sort of modern, just weird, abandoned urban crap, peri-urban, whatever. And I think that is, again, a great idea regardless of geography. And you could make the game more complex. As it is, the actual player character rules are very simple. I just ran it last week. It was fun. As well as the Sometimes Kingdom, to shout out that. I mean, both I think are great for players to dive into and imagine the world. And this one, I think, for GMs is really great because you have all these tools for GMs to sort of use in creating alien structures and thinking through like what does that look like. So yeah, I don't know. That's if Konstantine, I don't know if you want to summarize just some of the things you did to get a little bit into sort of the weeds of like how you brought this to life, and why you think ULTRADELVE is a fun game basically to play.
I mean, just taking it from the top, we have the atavistic need that we have to go where we're not supposed to. So that's the main idea. So when you get this book, what you'll get is classes that each of them were picked with the idea of how they fit into this notion of urban exploration. So we have, the looter, who's supposed to be there to bag and tag things. We have the explorer, who's supposed to be there to help you map out the location. I took the ideas from the OSR for dungeon generation to kind of like make the GM's life as easy as possible so they can make a structure and they can milk it, they can get the most of it out of what they can. We have the tinkerer, who is the gadgets guy, who is necessary for this. You always need a smart guy to mess with the alien technology you find there. And then we have the altered, which is the weirdo class, which you will get to. It was my favorite one to write. It is essentially the concept of ULTRADELVE starts with a haze, which is a global event of missing time. We just blinked, and who knows how many years have gone past. And some people were altered during this process, and we don't know what happened to these people. And when you go into a structure, what you'll find is, besides a bunch of rooms that are there, you're going to find weird biomes that kind of hate you, so you have to be careful with it, that have a lot of hazards and a lot of things that can happen to you. You can, get turned into liquid by like a weird mist that can go through you. You can get caught in a web where an unseen thing is going to turn you into mincemeat. A bunch of weird stuff is going to happen. You might get a doppelganger or two. You're going to find strange alien artifacts that we call the doodads, which you can use to make yourself more powerful, but you kind of like trade off. The more of these you use, the less human you become until you're gone. Then you disappear. You're going to find weird and strange creatures that you can't beat up, so you might as well. I'm not saying it as an namby-pamby. You can absolutely try to like throw hands, but it's not going to go well for you. And you can go out and you can try to sell this stuff and get in trouble with the cops. The idea for this is I wanted to create a situation where you had a gameplay loop that constantly got you into trouble. You were high risk, you got a high risk, high reward kind of gamble, right? And it kind of drove you to keep doing this, kind of gave you an idea to keep doing this. As straightforward as possible, that someone can just pick up and play with their friends, and they can turn to a campaign, they can use into one-shots, do whatever, adapt it according to how they need. That was my main interest in this.
I want to add briefly, because I think it's one of the strengths of ULTRADELVE that I think some of Blister Critters also taps into, is the locality of it. Maybe that's not the right word, but being able to play in your city, and being able to play, your hometown and have the structure, kind of have formed there, and you have all of that local context for, if this had happened, how would your community theoretically respond, and what are some of the weird ways that like local politics and this group over here and this stuff happening on that side of town. I've had a lot of fun incorporating that stuff into Blister Critters and thinking about that when I ran the session of ULTRADELVE that I did on our server. Was thinking about having it be like small, even though it is a global event. I think the small scaleness of it is a lot of fun to play in as a GM and a player.
Yeah, it feels very personal, and I think that that's something that's somewhat intrinsic in a lot of fantasy and sci-fi, right? Like we project our experiences into it, and you're writing up a fantasy village, like, well, what's the town that I'm from, kind of like, what are our predilections, things like that. But I do really appreciate that both in ULTRADELVE and in Blister Critters, that's a little bit more explicit and a little bit more forward, and yeah, because it is set on Earth during a relatively recognizable time, it really, I think, allows players to just not have to worry about the lore. You don't, like we were saying earlier, you don't have to have, a tome of lore to explain what's happening. You can just kind of jump right in, get into the action, and do your kind of like low power fantasy.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
No, what I'm saying is, games like, for example, the World of Darkness games, for all their flaws, one of the reasons why they resonated a lot with people was you could run into your hometown. You could just base it on the people you know. And let's not forget that science fiction, especially the best science fiction, is just, sociopolitical satire. It's our world, but like even more so.
Yeah,
our world, but make it more.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I think that it's one thing with fantasy, with secondary fantasy, to imagine Middle Earth, which, even though it has Earth in the title, is basically a totally made up place. And then now we can, and we've talked about on the show, it's not actually totally made up, and it's Europe and whatever, but it's like that's fine. If you're doing secondary fantasy, but I agree, Konstantine. There's something about science fiction as a genre that militates against that, and that kind of punishes that, and I think it becomes less interesting to have a story that has no bridge back to, like, wait a second, are there Terrans? Where are we in the timeline? Where are we in space? And some fiction does a good enough job of just saying, yeah, well, we're out here somewhere. That's kind of Traveler, Warhammer. It's like, yeah, that's old news. Stillfleet tries to frame it where you're in space, not on Earth, but Earth is still very, very important, because there actually aren't that many worlds that turn out to have human habitable biospheres, et cetera, and who knows whether there is a kind of teleological reason, there's some secret reason why Earth is actually important, or if this again is just, everything is ultimately a diaspora from Terra, so different civilizations kind of keep going back and whatever. But I think it's interesting with near future, because you can set it anywhere, it can be in your own hometown, and you can get into these discussions about the future of work and the future of urban life, and there's just so many cool, weird sci-fi elements you came up with in a really short span of time, and it was really fun to see, like Tony, how you brought that to life. So I'm hopeful that the game is going to come out soon. It is very fun to play. I hope people check it out, and I really do want to do more structures, because I think it'll be fun to take this whole idea of your hometown, and like I'm working on, obviously Ultra John, since we moved to Philly. So we're going to, we have, of course, now there's the structure that connects Trenton and Philly across the river. That's, this 20-mile wide gleaming bronze slanted pyramid. And, you just, sometimes people go in there and they pull cool shit out. So everyone is going to do that, right? All of us are going to come up with our own takes.
Ultra John is crazy.
It's a great
It's crazy. That's a crazy take.
There's alien water ice. I don't know if I'm saying
Wooder. It's Wooder.
We just moved here, so yeah.
Are you done your delve?
Yeah, there you go, Chris. You lived here a lot longer.
Go get some Wooder ice.
We're going to run out of time, but I want to make sure we have room for Konstantine to kind of shout out anything you're working on, whether it's related to ULTRADELVE or not. And also Tony, of course. Tony, you and I are working on a ton of stuff, of course. But yeah, if anyone wants to shout out anything or anything we haven't covered. Yeah.
I want to shout out about the fact that this is not just high concept, guys. don't worry about it. We already worked on. We got a pretty good structure. You can get started with the game. You can get it running. Second, like you get the book in your hands, you're off to the races. So don't worry about it. This is not some namby-pamby high concept thing where we'll just leave you hanging to figure it out. We're not making Numenon. That's the main thing. So Numenon. Nice, Chris. I wasn't expecting it. It's a philosophical game about being bugs. It's a whole thing. And on the secondary project thing, it's still in the works, but I'm working on making a comic book. It's a wuxia story set in Steinbeck times. More on it.
Yes.
Coming soon. Yes. It's essentially. Here's the premise. Do you guys know who Carl Panzram is?
No.
He is the 1930s American anime villain. He is literally the most evil man in the world. And imagine that guy getting access to like Hokuto Shinken from Fist of the North Star and then escaping his execution. We have a bunch of people trying to get him.
That rules. I love that concept so much.
So
Dust Bowl wuxia.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's pretty good.
So this is in the process of being made. Hopefully, it's going to be made early next year. So watch the space. But we'll get on this. I don't want to detract from what we're working on.
No, that's great. Well, we'll have to have you back on. And also, Tony, I mean, again, we're going to have you on all the time for all kinds of reasons. But maybe when we do have more of a plan for ULTRADELVE, we can have you both back on and talk a little more about the state of the game at that point, but also future projects and such. Before we wrap up here, and Chris, maybe you can ask Konstantine the traditional final question that for generations we've asked.
For eons.
I have to do the job of giving the plug for the Grit System Game Jam. So there is now 1 month. So we're counting down. So there's 1 month to the end of the jam. If you've not participated in a game jam, it's fine. It's easy. It's low stakes. You can write 1 page using some element of our system and submit it. It will be judged by not us, but by some other pro game designers, and they will reward prizes on our behalf, which are modest, but still prizes. And also you can enter other competitions. So there's right now is the very end, so the last few days of Appendix N Jam, which is up to 4-page A5 adventures with don't need to use the system. You can use the grid system. Which is run by Dankest Dungeons and our friends over at Plus One Experience and others. Love Appendix N Jam, and we have a submission we're adding, which actually doesn't really have it's system agnostic just because of space. But I mean, again, if you want to throw in some grit, you can bring it to ours, as well as a 1-page TTRPG jam, which is a huge one. So that's a really, really big one, and it's really meant to be 1 sheet, it's like front back. Piece of paper. So again, you can submit to all these. They accept multiple. So if you're working on something for Grid System Game Jam, or you're thinking about it, if you like any of the things you're hearing, even ULTRADELVE, if you're really interested in what we talked about today, contact us. There's still a month left. We can maybe talk to Konstantine and see if it's allowed to show you some behind the scenes. So you can write something for ULTRADELVE. Sneak peek, it's the same rules, right? It's going to use the same scores and all that. So it shouldn't be too hard. But we'd love to see everyone participate. It's our first big jam, and we really want to celebrate, make sure people know about the license, the SRDs, and just that all the games exist, including ULTRADELVE. So we actually asked Konstantine, included it already, even though it's not published yet, because we wanted to pre-clear that we would love a community to, in that classic OSR, NSR tradition, make your own adventures, make your own structures. So I do think that is a good way to launch a game, would be to already have adventures for it floating out there, even before the rules come out. With that, and thanks to anyone who voted for us for first ever any nod for best publisher.
Yeah, that was a surprise.
Yeah, it was a surprise. But yeah, we're excited to move into Gen Con. As we're taping this, Gen Con's going to start very soon, and we'll be there. And then after that, finally, we'll be able to fulfill Enter the Nostalgiatron and Danse Macabre, which are both making their way from China as we speak. So, hold on for more news there. But that's all the studio news. Just wanted to talk especially about the Game Jam. Chris, do you want to take it away to wrap things up?
Of course. Enough about us. Kos, Tony, where can we find both of you on the social medias, on the internet? How can we best support you moving forward?
So for myself, You can find me and you can find the work I've done on ConstantineWrites.com. That's my personal and professional website. Hopefully, it's where I'll be linking Moonshine Sifu, the comic I talked about, as soon as it's done. That's the title. Yeah.
That's so good. Damn it.
And also, I'm going to be a fuddy-duddy and say you can find me on LinkedIn because that's the only thing I constantly check lately, unfortunately. And you can also find me on Instagram. I don't know how to pronounce. I've written it weirdly. My username on Instagram is @relegis, but it's 3's instead of E's. I'm going to share it.
Yeah, no worries. We will have links to that in our show notes for the podcast listeners, and presumably on YouTube for the video heads out there.
Nice.
And Tony, where can we find you?
Actually, the best place to be finding my stuff is just at Stillfleet. If you really want to go and see when I very rarely update my own socials, they're all at Tonio Cabonio, spelled phonetically, and I'll let everybody parse that one out.
Is it a C or a K? You have to figure it out.
Yeah, try both. Give the other guy a follow.
Try a Q, yeah. The other Tony.
Go to ChatGPT and just shout the guy from the podcast. Find me the guy from the podcast.
They've already scraped it, so they know. All right. Well, with that, thank you both so much for joining us. Super fun conversation. Love chatting with both of you. And thank you, our listeners / viewers, for tuning in as always. This has been Why We Roll, and we'll see you next time.
See you, everybody.
Bye.
Later.